space for lifelong learning focused on both personal and professional development. We're an inclusive space where individuals can gather for co-working, fitness, and lifestyle events.
I think when I first moved, I would use the word adventurous because everything was so new, and it was just a new adventure for me, and I was exploring something different. Now I would use the word more adaptable. That's just because of what's going on with COVID, what's going on around the world. I've had to be more adapt to what's going on in situations around me, both personally and also professionally.
I think the word I'll use for my time in China would be perspective. I think it puts a lot of things in perspective. You know, what we experience in Singapore, it could be really good, and then you go to a new city, it's not as good, but you know, the underlying reasons are very different. And it also put a lot of what we have done in Singapore in perspective, right? Like, I think we tend to live in a small bubble, like we're always very proud of being first in whatever, right? But it kind of doesn't mean for a lot, you know, per se. You know, of course, when you go to a much larger country like China, you're just one of millions of people, you know. And if you're successful in Singapore, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be successful anywhere else, because I think the other word I'll use to describe my experience in China would be hunger. Like, I really seen how hungry people can be in order to succeed. It's on a different level from what you think you have in Singapore. I think Singapore is just a lot of pressure on parents, from society to succeed, and it will not fight that kind of internal hunger that some of our friends in China have, because to them it really means, you know, coming from nothing to having a chance to succeed in life and in such a competitive and cutthroat environment. So in order for one Jack Ma to come out, right, like probably millions of them died along the way. So I think that's the unfortunate truth that we don't see often, but it's also the truth that makes people so successful in China, because they are able to withstand the strong pressure, they're able to withstand the strong competition and come up top. And I think that's something that we are not inculcated enough in Singapore, because we have a very good environment, very good government. That's not always the case when in China.
Friends who will be willing to call me and really make local friends, like really making a community, building a community that you've found support with. Not just your families who had to love you unconditionally regardless who I am, but my friend, like really truly find some friends who are bring that new friends. And I think how long it takes is actually really depending on how much you're willing to integrate. You know, we could be closed off and just says, you know what, this is not for me, and I would just never touch any of that. Or it can be, you know, saying, I'm the bridge, I'm gonna try out there, let's try again, let's try to do this again, let's try to work together. You know, yes, we are from different places, yes, I speak one language, you speak another. Can we find a way to work this out? Can we, you know, how can I help you when you need my language support? Or me when I talk about challenges I face where that, you know, that reverse culture shock feeling, the identity issues where I feel like I may not be, I didn't belong there, like I was questioning if I'm truly Taiwanese, kind of a feeling. Be able to put yourself out there and be able to willing to interact with them, not trying to just do your own way and then say, you know what, there's no negotiation whatsoever. It's my way, or I'm not even talking to you about it. And I think that's where that kind of line for me is, how do you immerse? How much are you willing to give yourself to integrate into that community, in that society? How are you willing to socialize with that and to be able to so that is the time, how long it takes is absolutely how much you're willing to give.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Bonnie said, the integration, it takes effort. So I have a very funny story to share. 10 years ago, I walked into my first office. That was where Taobao was just starting. So all the girls in the office have not learned Taobao yet. So I love shopping, and obviously when I was younger especially, and the best way to any woman's heart is shopping. So all the women in my office, they just sort of heard about Taobao, but they just weren't very sure, too much effort, etc. So I'm being like that new girl from Singapore. I meant to read full-on Chinese during my first week into China. First month. It was really tough. But I decided, you know what, I want to integrate myself into the local culture, and I'm going to master Taobao for very superficial gains, which is do shopping. And secondly, is I really wanted to be able to use it as a conversational starter. So I became the girl, a Singaporean girl, to master Taobao and to link the logistics and the quality and everything. And I became everyone's best friend because I started to share with them Taobao links. We do bulk buys together, etc. So this is an example of like how it takes effort, because even till today, a lot of my friends in Singapore are still struggling with trying to understand the system. But when I was in China, then I just felt that, hey, I made an effort to come here. I want to understand how people do shopping locally. Second story that is my favorite story. Remember the girl that I was mentioning, first day, same day as at work. She was like, "You're Singaporean, you have a cute accent, I love it." So she became one of my best friend. The open door was maybe my cute Singaporean accent, but it became like she sat beside me. She was local Chinese, but grew up in Hong Kong for a few years, and we started to really talk, and it became to a relationship I had with her. She called me when she had a breakup. She invited me to her family's house, and the friendship like stretched on for 3 years. And after I left China, she called me back. I wasn't even living in China anymore, to be her maid of honor. And I remember that because I was a maid of honor, she was from a very traditional Chinese and Hong Kong family. Her mom had a whole bag of cash to be like her dowry. So during the wedding ceremony, the mom said, "You," and she pointed to me. I was to safeguard the whole bag of cash. And to me, you know, I was like, wow, that is really the epitome of a friendship. That I wasn't even living in the same country as this girl, but she wanted me to bear witness in one of the most important part of her life. So that to me was like, to me, the relationships that I've obtained out of all my times overseas or even Singapore, that to me is like the real essence of like why we even want to move ourselves up to a different place.
Because the rewards is so worth it. Like it's really like entire experience is so overwhelmingly joyful. Yeah.
I think for me, it actually pretty quickly. I mean, in a sense, because again, I mentioned I didn't know anyone here directly, so I really had to be, aggressive in terms of really associating myself with people, trying to get assimilated to the culture here, and so I would say, very easily. And surprisingly, though, it's really easy to meet people around in Singapore. Maybe because it's a smaller city, but people were quite open to new people, and I think maybe also because there's a large expat community here for us, so it was easy to connect with them because we all had sort of similar stories of moving from our home country to a new environment, and then being accepted within society. I hope I've been accepted in society for the past 7 years, but no, I've really grown to the culture here, and for me, I'm a big foodie, so being in Singapore and Asia, it's great.
It's a journey because, in a sense, I've been making a lot of Chinese friends since young. Having that foundation was helpful. But, there's two parts to my story in China, right? So I spent half a year in Beijing and 1 year in Shanghai. So I think even though I've been to China numerous times for vacations or for learning trips, it's really different when you live there. And I felt that my time in Beijing, I don't think I've really felt a sense of belonging there because you're just trying to fit in, trying to learn a lot about living in that place. But I think my time in Shanghai has been a lot better because you kind of have that first half a year experience, and when you went to Shanghai, it's kind of more open and more international as well. They're more used to having foreigners around them. So I felt a lot more open. So how do I realize, how do I judge that I'm accepted by society? I tried dating some Chinese girls, right? And then it went well, right? I think that's a good sign that you could communicate them on a level that is deep enough for them to continue to wanting date.
I think I mentioned a little bit earlier about how I felt that when you lived abroad, you open up your own experiences. You almost open your own eyes to learn more about yourself, as well as people around you, and that also means that you learn more about yourself and where you grew up or where you consider home. Actually, I find it very difficult to think about the word home because I was born in Malaysia, but never really spent time in Malaysia. I've got really relatives there. I grew up childhood in Taiwan, but I've left it for 10-20 years now. 10 years, and then I moved to I was in States where I call home for good, where most of my friends are from, and then And then I moved back to Taiwan for a couple of years, and I moved to Singapore, where I stayed 10 years. So it's kind of hard for me to identify where home is. But every country I've lived, grew up in, or spent time in, I think once I move to another country, I can see it from a different perspective. I think I always learn to uncover more about it in a way. Let's just put States, US, is because I do consider it's one of my most, I guess, closest to where I felt I spent most of my challenges in, and growing up, studying, and the first job and all of that. Yeah, like going back has really made me think about, I still have a lot of friends who are really close to me in the US, but I've realized that my values have changed. I've grown up. I feel like I've grown up. I've grown more, a different worldview. I think used to, when I live in the States, I feel like the map is like the States is the biggest, and then everywhere is a little bit smaller. Yeah, it's just, it wasn't my fault. You grew up with that education, right? You kind of like that. But now I've gone back and I'm like, oh, actually it's just part of that world map, isn't it? And I think that's the biggest perception change. And I think changing that stereotypes, I think it's totally fine. I have the stereotypes, of different places where I live, or people. But knowing to be able to reflect a bit more when I leave a country and go back, and I think that reflection is really important. I think, I've definitely changed my value, grew my value, and I've seen a more slightly more equal level around the world.
For me, home is always Singapore, despite spending a good 8 to 9 years out of Singapore and part of the most important young adult years. I think that I had a really rough time moving back to Singapore, and I would speak this on behalf of a lot of my friends who have to leave China to go back Hong Kong, Taiwan, Singapore, and etc. because we were living a really fun life in China because we were Chinese. We could assimilate in, and we really enjoyed the boom of China then. It was really fun. Coming back to Singapore, despite knowing that it's home, it took me, to be very honest, a good 1 to 2 years to even just like accept it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I think you very pointedly mentioned that when you go back home, you realize that your friends, it's different.
Yeah.
It's different because you came from such like a multinational worldview, and I realized that the HDB flat is not everything of the world.
Yeah.
And you're living in a country whereby someone, like a lot of my friends were like you, and we had really interesting conversations about, so where do you consider home, where do you study, where your family, my brother is here, my sister is there. To coming back to Singapore, for me, it was very much about just our lives and our apartment and our jobs. And that was the toughest transition that I had to navigate, which is why I decided to do all the radical things that I did. And it kind of catalyzed me to not want to back into the system. And I think that was the beauty of coming back home.
Yeah. No, that resonates so strongly. I think you're right. Like, I still have like really good friends, but you're right. The type of topic, the things you talk about, what you see as, I don't know, maybe what you strive for together is a little bit different. It just feels different. And it's not judgmental of any type. It's really just a feeling of, we have grown apart. I mean, we have grown up to be a little bit different. And it just felt that growing up is...
Yeah, that's quite sad. And it's something that we have to kind of walk through it.
Yeah, exactly. You have to work through it, and they're still good friends, but it's just different. You might have new friends though, who have share that kind of commonality and different way of thinking, and it's great. Yeah, it's very interesting.
First, I learned to be more grateful, right, for Singapore, in the sense, a lot of things run well and work well, but on the other hand, being in China also exposed to me and made me realize, put me in perspective of how small Singapore really is, right? Like traveling from one end to the other end in just half an hour, and normally I have to travel from one end of Shanghai to the next end of Shanghai. By public transport, by the subway, could take 2 hours or more, and that's one. And I think another thing it exposed to me is in terms of technology. I think in news, it seems that we are doing really well for fintech and whatever, but in terms of mindset, in terms of consumer perceptions of using technology, I think we could be lagging behind China. Like I can survive in China with just my handphone and my power bank. I don't have to bring my wallet around because everything can be accessible via a QR code or your mobile wallet. So I think that's something that I think we haven't reached the stage yet in Singapore where we can go everywhere without using cash. So that's an area where I felt could really be improved. And in terms of perception, sad to say, right, I think a lot of friends still don't really have a updated perception or impression of what China has become. A lot of it is still stuck in the, China is a third world country, it's developing. But in the tier 1 cities like Shanghai, Beijing or Shenzhen, I was in a restaurant in Guangzhou, that whole restaurant is automated, there's no humans inside. All the robots are cooking your food, the robotic servers are serving your food. So I think that's the level of technology China has become. So I think it's rather than having China learn from us in the past, I guess it's time to switch the mentality and see what we can learn from China as well.
Yeah, I had this experience when I went to Shanghai.
Yeah.
The cashless payment.
Yes.
Really interesting.
I was so fumbled because when I was in Suzhou back in 2018, so Raffles, CapitaLand has a huge shopping mall in Suzhou, so it's called the Suzhou City Mall. So the food court is owned by Food Republic, right? Very familiar brand. But the only unfamiliar thing inside there was that you can't use cash to pay, right? And as a foreigner, you don't have the QR code, right? So we had a fumble, right? We had to ask strangers whether could we give you cash, can you help us pay? So that was you felt very useless there, right? Like you're just you don't fit in really well, in a society that has fully embraced technology at a level that is a lot faster than Singaporeans. Yeah.
Being so far away from the US now, I'm really a bit disconnected to like what's going on, especially within politics, what's going on around just everyday life. But again, I think my perception or idea of like home is still New York or the US, and I think living here, it's allowed me to give me a better perspective of living and experiencing new things, but also being connected to my Filipino culture. But my real opinions or perspective of the US hasn't really changed that much, so I don't think I wish I could be more connected there. It wasn't so far away, but I think I'm more interested in what's going on now. So
I would say it's okay, it's all right, you can do stupid things, it's fine, because you're gonna grow up and you're gonna learn that experience, and it's still gonna be spectacular no matter what. So yeah.
Say that you've done well, in spite of all the fears and all the distractions and all the like rojak career. That's what I like to call it. Like it's like you've done this, you've done that, you've done everything. I would say to my younger self that Carmen, you've done well.
I probably would say, don't worry, don't be so stressed about what you're going to experience, or just go with the flow.
I would say make more friends and then travel more, because I think when I was Beijing, I was a bit hesitant to travel too much out of Beijing. I think I missed a lot of good opportunities, right? I went during winter, I didn't go to Harbin or those very nice places during winter, and you kind of can only go once during every year. So I think I would tell myself to travel more, not to worry too much on expenses, right? Just go have fun and enjoy the experience.
My younger self, and I felt like, oh my god, I was so stupid back then.